With all the atrocities and sadness that's going on in Ukraine, I felt I had to make this simple pendant. It's a peace pendant, but you could do it, in different colors or different ways. So I'm using 1.6 millimeter aluminium for the framework. I just wanted something thick that, a thicker gauge that wasn't too feeble. So I'm going to wrap it around the top of my Whammer hammer just to make the circle. You could use, wrap it around anything cylindrical or circular to get that shape or whatever size you want to create it. So there's the circle, and you can see I've left overlapping wires so that I can secure the top. So take one of the wires and bend it up to a right angle so that you've got the stem. So that's going to be the top. Just check that it's not distorted and it's still circular when you've bent that up. And then you're going to connect the other wire around it so as not to distort it. I always cut just enough to make the loop. So I've left just sort of like a centimeter there, or just under a centimeter in fact, just so that I can make a little hook with the tips of my round nose pliers, and then I can just bring the top back in around, and then I'll just squish or squeeze that little piece of wire around the top stem that's protruding. That way I don't change the shape of my circle. If I was to wrap it around, I could distort it. So there's the circular outer frame of the circle or the pendant shape. I'm just going to put it on the side of my block to hammer the outer edge, and that way I'll get a nice framework that is wearable and durable, and it's work hardened and it won't distort. So give it a sort of a spread with the top of the hammer, and now you've got a nice framework to work with. You can also use the dapping head and texture the outer edge just to give it a bit more shine. So now I'm going to use 0.8 of a millimeter 20 gauge to do the actual sort of piece motif on the framework. I'm going to start by just cutting a length, and I'll make a tiny little central circle. So you hold the center of the length and then bring the wire round on each side, and now I'm just pulling and straightening so that it's a little bit work hardened because I'm using soft silver plated copper. So you just want a very, very small circle right in the center of that piece. That's going to be the two sides of the peace sign. So make that first, and then get another piece of 0.8 millimeter wire, and you're going to start by attaching this around the top of the pendant. So I leave enough, so a nice sort of extra length at the top, because I always make a little spiral that hides the wrap, and bring the wire down through the center of the circle and cut it off, leaving just enough protruding there at the base that you can wrap over. But before you do that, just thread it with that little piece that you made earlier. Thread it through the central loop. Now hold the center wire at the center base of your framework, and then just bend it around and squeeze the end so that it's take off any excess. I've got just a tiny bit too much, so be careful not to cut through the two, and then just make sure that it's as central as you can get it. I mean, none of my pieces are perfectly sort of straight or anything like that, but try and get it as central as you can. So there we are. I've got it now in the center, and I just make sure that it's not going to move around. Now this extra piece here are the two sides, so it's like a V. First of all, try and make that little circle a bit tighter. So if you can grip it with the tips of your chain nose pliers, you can sort of squeeze it and grip the circle so it's not sliding up and down so much. And now we're going to bring the wires down on each side to create that sort of V shape on each side of the center wire to create the peace sign. So spend a bit of time getting it sort of as accurate as you can. And once you've got one side sort of sitting where you want it, just hold it where you want it with your fingers on one hand and then wrap the remaining protruding wire or projecting wire around. Just wrap it a couple of times to make sure it's completely, and then just secure it like that. Again, use your pliers to squeeze and flatten the ends and make sure there's no sort of sticky out bits and everything's flattened. So that's one side, and then you're going to do the same for the other side. So just get the positioning with your fingers, and once you've got it, hold it where you want it positioned and then grip it tightly and wrap the projecting wire around the side of the frame. Again, cut off the excess and squeeze it nice and tight so that it's not going to move around. The main thing is getting it in position at this stage. So now you've got that sort of shape of the peace sign. I would just put it on my block and very, very gently, I'm literally going to tap, I'm not hammering hard, just where I've wrapped it on the framework, and that just makes sure that it's completely flat and not sticking up. And now with the top, I've left this excess and I've left it specifically so that I can create a little spiral. So you've probably seen me make these hundreds of times before in all my other tutorials. They're a great way of hiding any sort of mess or wraps underneath. So I'm just rolling that around itself to make a spiral right at the top, and that hides the wraps underneath. So just get that nice and central. And there you have, that's basically the peace sign motif. So the top, I could make a link now and put it on a hook, but I'm going to make a flower. I've just decided for this, make it a bit more special, I'm going to put a little flower. So this is 0.4 of a millimeter, very fine wire because I want the flower to be small. I've made a loop, that's one petal. I've made another loop and crossed over the middle. I'm again going adjacent to that one and I'm crossing over, making another loop, and I just keep making loops, crossing over the center every single time. So you can see every time I'm looping around, I'm crossing back over the center. And you can make as many petals as you want, but to me that's, just right. Cut off, leaving a longer length. Now, do you remember that short end that you first left? That's the bit that's going to hold everything together. So take that end and go through to the center of the petals and bind it to secure everything at the center. So you just have to bind it 1 or 2 times, bring that short length round. I've bent it now around there and I'm going to cut off the excess. Now that will mean you'll just need to move the petals back into shape because it'll have been distorted a bit. So you've now got your petals and this long length stem. Before you do anything else, just hammer the ends of the petals. That makes the wire tougher and also makes it spread and makes it a bit thicker. So it flattens and spreads and work hardens. So just the edges, and make sure you don't hit anything else. So we've got now a little bit of a firmer piece. It's not so soft because it was 0.4. Now with your longer length, you can thread on the center bead. So I'm using yellow because of the Ukraine flag. I want blue and yellow. So thread on a small bead to the center of the flower and then bring that around through the petals and back around to bind it to the center. And then with the remaining extending wire, start wrapping around the base of the bead. That sort of just gives it a little nest to sit into. And then bring it back around to the back, and you'll have a little stem then for the flower, because you'll need something. I'm just curving the ends of the petals now just to give it a little bit more of a two-dimensional shape. It just creates more of a shape. And so now you've got your flower and a stem. So you can now wrap or connect and secure that flower to the framework wherever you want to put it on. So I'm just going to put it on one side, and you just wrap around a couple of times and just use your pliers to get through, because it's fine and it's delicate. So wrap it around to secure. I mean, if you didn't have enough wire left over, don't worry, because you can always add wire at any stage, and you know, keep adding. It doesn't really matter. You could actually put little seed beads around the framework. You can do all sorts of things with this sort of circular frame. So don't feel you have to follow it exactly. Do it as you want to. So with the end, I'm just finishing off there. So that's on one side of my pendant. Feels a little bit slippy, but I'll come back to that in a minute. You can either start with the flower or start with the leaves. Maybe I should have started with the leaves. That's why it's slipping. But anyway, we'll come back to it, because we can always get that to be a bit more solid right at the end. Right, the next bit, let's move on to the leaves. So that's a nice long length, like, you know, sort of half your arm or your arm's length, you know, just as, you know, something that's long enough to work with, I'd say about a foot. So connect it on to the opposite side of the frame, and I'm just going to secure it around and then cut off that excess there. So now it's firmly on, and I always sort of finish off my ends while I'm working, so I don't have to come back and do that. Now make a loop. This is for the leaves, so just make a loopy loop. Doesn't matter, it's not a shape, it's just a loop, and then hold that on. Put your fingers where it meets and twist that loop. So you create a little tiny stem, a twisted stem. Now wrap around the framework again, so around the outer circular frame, so that you can make sure it doesn't move, and do another loop and then twist. So again, around the frame to secure the wire, and then another loop, hold it and twist a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and then back around the framework to make sure it doesn't slip and it secures it. So you keep doing that, a loop, and then you bring the wires together and twist where they meet on the framework, and then around the frame. This is really a tiara technique. You'll know if you've, you know, done anything or hair accessories, this is used quite a lot for tiaras. So I'm just continuing. It's up to you to make these as small, as big, as, you know, as many. It's really, you know, depending on how much wire you've got. I'm not going to go too crazy on these, because you probably don't want to watch me do this for too long. Now you've got the hang of it. So it's a loop, twist while you're holding it against the frame, and then you finish off the end around the framework. So I've come up now to pretty much the top, so I'm just secure it, cut off the excess, and then I've got all these loops sitting out, but I want to make them a bit more shapely, because they don't really look like leaves at the moment. So to make them look a little bit more leaf-like, what you do is you just pinch the top a bit. So open the centers and pinch the top. So it's sort of like 2 or 3 different movements. You have to go a little bit of a pinch at the tip of the leaf, and open if it goes too long, just put your pliers back into the center of the leaf to shape. So spend a bit of time shaping these leaves. So to the tip, open up and tip again, and just shape. So that's really up to you, how thin you want to make them, or what movement in them you want to make. That's I'm going to leave that to you, but I'm just going to go around each little shape like that and create a more leaf-like motif. And once you've gone around all your leaves and you're happy with the shaping of them, you can actually hammer the outer ones. You can actually bring them all to the outside and then bring them back, but I'm just going to go round the tips of the leaves. Again, you know why I'm doing this. This is to harden the shape so that it doesn't distort, and it just gives a bit of work. I can't really get inside the inner ones because I don't want it to distort my peace sign, so I can just work on these a little bit more. So now that I've got my leaves, I can move them around to create, a bit more of a natural looking vine or branch. So that's my peace branch, and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time sorting those out. And once I've got them as I want them, I need to add a bit of colour. I mean, you could have done that with a blue wire. I just didn't have any blue wire at the time. So if you have blue wire, make your leaves with blue wire. Otherwise, like me, if you don't have some fine, 0.5 blue wire, you could get you could colour them with an enamel paint. Now my flower keeps moving around, so I'm going to show you how I would stop this happening. Get another piece of 0.4 wire, wrap it round above, and then bring it around near the flower to hold that in place. And so it's probably good that this is like a little bit of troubleshooting. So if you have the same problem as me with your flower moving around and actually having that excess, now that I've got it, means I could make some more leaves with this extra bit of wire. So this is up to you. You might want to put leaves on both sides, or not have a flower and just have leaves on it. So connect it again, make sure it's not going to slip around, and then with that extended wire, I may as well, because I've got enough there, make one more leaf. So I make the loop and then twist while holding it on the frame and then connect it to the frame. So you can see sometimes something that doesn't work out too well can go in your favor. You can just say, oh, I hadn't thought of doing that. If I've got leftover, I'll make a spiral, I'll make a leaf, I'll make a flower. The binding wire can be used for, extra little details and decorations. So I may as well just get that work hardened with a bit of hammering with the whammer, and that way it's not going to distort. So I've got an extra leaf now ready on the side of my flower. So just spend a bit of time, as I said, getting the shaping right and the center of your flower right. I think I'm just about happy with that. So I've got a marker pen. Now this is permanent marker for metal, but as I say, you could have used blue wire. You could have painted it with enamel paints, whatever you have to hand to create I wanted the Ukraine colours, the flag colours. So I'm just using this marker, and it will dry and stay that colour, which is nice. So I'm putting it just on the leaves. So I've got the yellow and the blue of the flag. If it's in the way, just pull out the leaf, and you can always push it back to where you want it to sit afterwards. So that gives me the colour, and now I shouldn't really be touching it, it should be drying, but I just want to move ahead to show you how I finish it off. I want to make the top of the pendant, so I'm going to make the link. So all you have to do, bend it forward and then bring it round into a circular shape to create the top of the pendant, ready to hang on a cord, a chain, whatever you want to hang it from. I hope you like this tutorial, and let's hope for peace for Ukraine.